Although the purpose of the Constitutional Convention was to revise the Articles of Confederation, it turned into a convention that replaced the Articles with a new constitution. Issues over representation, slavery, federal versus state power, and the extent of democratic participation dominated debate at the convention. The issue of representation was one of the most debated issues surrounding the Constitutional Convention. Under the Articles of Confederation, each state had one vote. 9 of the 13 states needed to agree to pass a law, and all 13 states needed to agree in order to amend the Articles of Confederation. This made it difficult to make laws because individual states could block legislation or change. The major issue of representation revolved around how many delegates or representatives each state would have. The Virginia Plan proposed a two-house or bicameral legislature where delegates would be awarded to the states based on population. States with larger populations would receive more delegates. This plan was favored by states with large populations because they would have more representatives. The New Jersey Plan proposed that each state would have the same number of representatives and that there would only be one legislature like there was under the Articles of Confederation. Smaller states favored this plan because they would be able to keep their power they enjoyed under the Articles of Confederation. This issue was resolved by the Great Compromise. The Great Compromise created a bicameral legislature. The lower house, or the House of Representatives, would base the number of delegates on population, while the upper house, which is the Senate, would have the same number of delegates for each state. This compromise gave both the small and large states the power they wanted in the legislature. The major debate around slavery at the Constitutional Convention centered around representation and not whether slavery would be legal. States with small populations of slaves did not want slaves to be counted for representational purposes. They argued that slaves could not vote, but if they were counted for representational purposes, voters in slave states would have increased representation. Southern states that had large numbers of slaves argued that slaves should be counted as whole for representational purposes. The 3/5 compromise was the solution to this debate. Under this compromise, every 5 slaves would be counted as 3 people for representational purposes. Although the term slave or slavery is not included in the Constitution, this was an issue at the Constitutional Convention. The issue of the legality of slavery was neglected by the Constitution and therefore legalized. Under the Constitution, Congress could not outlaw the Atlantic slave trade for their first 20 years of existence. It also protected slavery with the Fugitive Slave Clause that required the return of escaped slaves. The new Constitution expanded federal power from the Articles of Confederation. Under the Articles of Confederation, the states had most of the power. This was done to prevent the federal government from becoming too powerful. The Constitution expanded federal power by creating an executive branch and a judicial branch to go along with the legislative branch that was around with the Articles of Confederation. It also expanded federal power to resolve issues between the states. The expansion of federal power under the Constitution also led many people throughout the United States to become concerned with government infringing upon their rights. Compromise regarding the expansion of federal power was reached with the addition of the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution. These became known as the Bill of Rights and are specific rights that are listed and that cannot be taken away by the federal government. The extent of democratic participation was another issue at the Constitutional Convention. The Constitution created a republic where delegates are elected by the people to represent them. Some were concerned about giving the masses too much participation in the government. They worried that they would make poor choices and elect people that could not best rule. One compromise over this issue was the creation of the Electoral College. The Electoral College is used to elect the President of the United States. Under this system, people within a state do not directly elect the President. They actually elect delegates to cast their vote for President.